Okay, he was part of the Puerto Rican Alliance back in 1968, early 68. And he and a number of other, and it was a very small group because I think our numbers was 0.007% of the school population. And so they gathered together and said, we want something that represents, that could teach us about ourselves, that we can get a sense of who we are. So, he and Bob and Edwin and other people, Chicky, at the...
You're going to have to give last names here.
we didn't have last names. We were still operating from the neighborhood way of interacting with one another. We had not acquired that need to project an intellectual facade as we have in recent past. But there's a number of students. There was a lot of pressure in other schools. Columbia University had wanted student representation. City University, City College wanted Black Studies, and there was a number of students that were connecting to one another in city universities, which later became the Puerto Rican Student Union, and your father was part of that too. That was off campus, but he was part of the people who organized, who did the research, who went out and talked to people, developed a strategy of recruiting teachers, finding teachers, evaluating teachers, so they could come teach here. So even before the departments, even before the institute, because it was the institute and then the department, even before the institute was developed, we were doing 1, 2, 3, and at the same time doing a lot of recruiting for students, because another program kicked in, which was the SEEK, and it's some initials, but I don't remember what they are. Student Economic Development.
Search for Education, Elevation, and Knowledge, something like that.
So that brought in a lot of Latin America, a lot of Latinos, particularly Puerto Ricans, but it was never solely Puerto Rican. The majority was Puerto Rican, but when we said Puerto Rican, in there was Panamanians, there were Dominicans, there were Cubans, there were South Americans. Although they constituted the minority and we overwhelmed them, we being Puerto Rican, it was that population that came in, and then your father was part of the leadership of what they call the Puerto Rican Alliance, which was the core group that developed all of these programs, and they were student based, and it was he was part of that whole thing. Specifically, he was a photographer, he was a sociologist, he was the runner, he was the one who had a car. Very important, had a car, and he knew how to run the mimeograph machine, and he knew how to write. So, he had that thrust, and he could move people around and get things done.
Well, your father was head over heels more politically advanced than we were, at least in terms of that time, where he was at. And Milga, my wife, and people like Joaquin will tell you that your father was kind of the philosopher of the group. He was quiet, unassuming. He would sit back, check out what people had to say, and then he would sum up. And it was always like, okay, we've done the analysis, where do we go from here? What has to be done?